Janice Badenoch is not only an outstanding research scientist, but she has also excelled at leadership, a former Deputy Dean of the Cave Hills Faculty of Science and Technology, and a former coordinator of their chemistry discipline. She currently serves as the chair of the Campus Academic Quality Assurance Committee. Janice Badenoch has led the Cave Hill campus through the recent reaccreditation process as chair of the reaccreditation committee there, and is one of the current academic board representatives for Cave Hill on the Board of Undergraduate Studies. Dr. Badenoch, ladies and the gentlemen who are here with us, is representing the UWI on the Barbados National Ozone Steering Committee, on the National Chemicals Convention Committee, and is a former consultant to the United Nations Environment Program Regional Office of Latin America and the Caribbean, dealing with ozone depleting substances. She's the treasurer of the Caribbean Diaspora for Science, Technology and Innovation, that's CATSTI, and a governing council member of the Caribbean Science Foundation, that's the CSF. And here is another layer to this lady, which smells good actually for this morning's proceedings. She is known for her fun, interactive, and people-centered approach to delivering chemistry lectures. In fact, she has been recognized for this with the John H. Wolfenden Teaching Prize, awarded while she was at Dartmouth in 2001, and more recently in 2018, 2019, the UWI-CETL Guild Recognition Award for Outstanding Contribution to Student Learning. So as we join to have conversations that will promote diversity and inclusion in science, and this is so critical to the Sustainable Development Goals, I put you in the hands of Dr. Janice Badenoch and ask you to give a warm virtual welcome to this outstanding Caribbean woman in science. Over to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you so very much, Marvadine, for that wonderful introduction. And I want to say good morning to all of our participants, and thank you all for taking some time out this morning to join this inaugural IUPAC Global Women's Breakfast aimed at connecting Caribbean women in science. While I don't have time to quite discuss all of my immunochemistry, instead we are here and we are pleased to welcome 3 such Caribbean women in science who have promised to engage us in a conversation about their professional journey. They're all different, but no less engaging on all 3 fronts. Before we actually start today, and we are going to stick as close to time as possible, I want to just remind the participants to please place any questions you have in the chat, and we will pose them to our panelists in the question and answer session. So without further ado, and I'm just checking to ensure that our first speaker is still with us. And I'm going to ask Dr. Brown just to confirm for me that I can start my introductions with our first speaker. Yes, she is. I think her there. Yes, wonderful. Yes. So our first speaker is Mrs. Samantha Joseph. Mrs. Joseph holds an MSc and has been a lecturer within the Department of Chemistry, Faculty of Natural Sciences, University of Guyana for the last 10 years. More recently, she has played a major role in the design and launch of the BSc in Food Science program, which is now being offered through the Department of Chemistry at the university. Along with her many administrative responsibilities as head of Department of Chemistry, Mrs. Joseph is tasked with the coordination and delivery of the first-year general chemistry courses and the Introduction to Food Science course. She is a career educator who has taught chemistry at both secondary and tertiary levels and is passionate about finding new ways to make chemistry education appealing to students of all ages. Her research interests include toxicant analysis of cassava products, quality parameters of cassava flour, and antioxidant properties of cassava root. So we are looking forward to hearing from her. Now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to read all three introductions so that once our speakers do speak, they can go from speaker to speaker. So our second panelist, I'm pleased to welcome Professor Marcia Roye. Prof. Roye holds a Bachelor of Science and a degree of Philosophy degree from the UWI Mona campus. She is an internationally respected academic who has a distinguished record of original work, having sought to build research capacity at the UWI in the undersubscribed area of molecular virology, with a special or specific focus on the largest group of plant viruses referred to as Gemini viruses. These viruses have caused substantial crop losses globally, and of course that is of interest to the Caribbean. And Prof. Roye's collaborative research has been used to develop control strategies that can be used in the management of Gemini viral infections in the agriculture industry. Now, Prof. Roye has also made a significant contribution in the field of health, in the area of health. She has successfully partnered with the Ministry of Health, the UWI, and the Institute of Human Virology, University of Maryland School of Medicine, on a multidisciplinary research project to determine the extent of antiretroviral HIV drug resistance in Jamaica patients. That data is quite useful in managing and improving the treatment of HIV-positive patients in Jamaica. And we can only imagine that that research can then be moved towards the wider Caribbean space. In addition to a number of other accolades, Prof. Roye was awarded the prestigious L'Oreal UNESCO Special Fellowship in the footsteps of Marie Curie, the first of its kind, a UNESCO L'Oreal Fellowship for Young Women in Science, a Fulbright Fellowship, and the award of the Scientific Research Council, Shell Young Scientist Technologist Award in 2000. Now, Prof. Roye has also undertaken a number of administrative assignments and responsibilities at the university. She has served as head of the Biotechnology Center and also as the Faculty of Science and Technology's Associate Dean for Graduate Studies and Research. In that latter capacity, she has worked assiduously to transform graduate processes, improving student registration and orientation, among many others. Prof. Roye has also served several national, regional, and international boards and committees. She's a member of the UNESCO National Commission Science Advisory Committee, a member of the Advisory Board of Directors of the National Compliance Regulatory Authority, and served on the CARICOM Science, Technology, and Innovation Committee delegation to explore cooperation and collaboration with Cuba. She's also played an important role in the development and hosting of annual workshops on concepts in genetic engineering for teachers and students pursuing the CAPE examination. Our third panelist this morning is Dr. Alison Gajadhar, and I'm pausing as I pronounce that because we had a wonderful laugh about the different territories in the region and how we pronounce that last name. But she is pronounced Gajadhar, and I'm hoping I'm getting that right. And her path is going to be a little different. She is the managing director of KMA Consulting based in St. Lucia, which is an independent managing consulting firm offering personalized services to top and senior management within the service and manufacturing sectors to design and implement management systems. Dr. Gajadhar is a chartered director with a Doctor of Philosophy in Chemistry, and I am told she is one of us. She is a UWI student, a UWI former student, a UWI alumnus. She has a graduate diploma in law, notice the diversity there, and postgraduate certificates in project management, quality management, and productivity. She is considered one of the pioneers of the promotion of quality management systems and standards within the local industrial and service sectors, as well as in the development of related, regulatory and non-regulatory conformity assessment programs. Her keen understanding of organizational systems has placed her at the heart of the transformation of many entities within both the public and private sectors. Dr. Gajadhar possesses a blend of practical experience, and we need that grounding in practical experience and understanding in corporate governance, in business operations, and government regulatory processes. She founded and operated companies such as a solar water heating company and a beverage manufacturing plant, which was sold to a leading regional company. Dr. Gajadhar has also served as a director of boards, for several private and public sector entities, both locally and regionally, and has had the honor of serving her country as an independent senator. Ladies, I have my shake. I am sure my panelists have, and all have their tea or their coffee. All of the participants are ready. So we want to invite you all to make your presentations.
Good morning, ladies. It sure is a pleasure for me to be here among these giants of West Indian women scientists. This morning, I've been tasked with looking at the role of visibility, connection, and collaboration in advancing opportunities for women in science in the Caribbean, and looking at it in a way that follows my journey as a science professional in academia. So this conversation that we're going to have this morning, I can tell you, this is a conversation that has been had in my department at the University of Guyana, at lunch breaks, between classes on a Friday afternoon. So it's very near and dear to my heart. So I'll jump right into it. With reference to visibility, there's a common term that is often used. You cannot be what you cannot see. This term underlines the importance of having role models for women in science. I chose a science path because I did well in the subject area with very little effort. I was the only one of my siblings to choose this area of study. After taking the CSEC exam, I opted for sixth form because at that time I was not sure what I wanted to become. I knew one thing, it was not a medical doctor, and it seems at that time that every one of my colleagues who were doing science wanted to become a medical doctor. My first female role models in science were actually my A-level chemistry lecturers, Dr. Cox and Mrs. Henry, two women with an intense love and understanding of the subject area. For the first time, I started toying with the idea of a career in chemistry, but at this time it seemed as though academia was my only option. I didn't perform as well as I would have liked in chemistry at the A-levels, and applied to university to actually pursue a degree in information technology for no other reason than it seemed to be the going thing at the time. After registration, I quickly changed my mind and changed programs to environmental science. However, after 1 year, I was bored with this program and I managed to pass all my chemistry courses. So once again, I changed my study focus. Yes, this time back to chemistry. I subsequently joined the Department of Chemistry as an assistant lecturer and spent many years at this level. And those years spent at this level, there were many reasons for those many years spent at this particular level. I started a family, and as a result of that, I was unable to take up study opportunities that were available because many of these academic programs did not allow for funding for dependents. In addition for that, at that time, I did not feel that the work that I was doing within the department was of much importance. The leadership of the department that time, I don't think they saw the assistant lecturers as very important in the future of the chemistry department. And I truly believe that the majority of my academic meandering was due to the absence of visible female role models in the sciences. During my BSc, I had only 4 female lecturers in the entire program of study. Should I extend this to my postgraduate diploma and master's, that count would only increase to 6. At present, the percentage of females in the Department of Chemistry at University of Guyana is just below 40%. As women working in science and a space that is largely male-dominated, we've had these conversations, and one such and a collection of these conversations, I should say, led to the formation of a group at the out of the Department of Chemistry at the University of Guyana called Women in Science and Engineering, shortened to say WISE, by two female faculty members, Dr. Dawn Fox and Dr. Keisha Holder, in 2016. And the main focus of this group was to encourage mentorship among women and girls for research collaboration, especially with social scientists, so that we could better understand the underlying social drivers for professional development and that work-life balance, and for outreach. To date, we've had two successful symposiums. For connections to be made, oftentimes studies involved. There must be an exchange of knowledge and experience. Very often, this will involve academic study programs, which will require study to travel to other university campuses. In many instances, women are unable to take advantage of these opportunities because of responsibilities in the home. And I've already stated my position where I started a family and I was unable to travel because they were small at the time. Many academic programs do not provide such funding that is required. In addition, when funding is available internally from the organization to which you're attached, and in this case, I'm referring to my employers, it often seems that the disbursement of these funds is very subjective. There was no other alternative to complete a graduate degree locally because there was simply no programs such as the ones I was interested in offered locally. So I decided to look within the region for two reasons. Because the price tag basically was lower than comparable programs that were further afield, and the distance to home. So having made that decision, I made the decision to travel to Jamaica to do the MSc in Food and Agro-Processing Technology with two children in tow. It was the hardest year of my life. It's only the grace of God and just dogged determination that allowed me to successfully complete that program. However, while there, I was able to make very valuable connections, namely with my program coordinator, Dr. Golson Barnaby, and my research supervisor, Dr. Bailey. On my return home, the then leadership of the University of Guyana was interested in adding a food science degree to our program offering. This opened a new area of opportunity for me. I was able to work along with Professor Virian Thomas, a food scientist of Guyanese heritage based at the Florida AM University, during the design of this food science program. She brought with her years of experience in teaching and designing academic programs, but most importantly, we shared a common heritage of having been born, raised, and educated in Guyana. She had also lectured within the Department of Chemistry and served as a head of department before migrating. She has maintained contact with the faculty and is a rich source of teaching resources. Having made these academic connections, collaborations allow for the formation of networks aimed at sharing ideas, resources, but most importantly, for the informal mentoring by female peers. Very often, persons in this region of the world have only considered collaborations worthy of mentioning if it's with someone in first world countries, such as the United States of America, UK, and possibly Canada. However, even in our small spheres, there are specialists, and collaborations have the possibilities of opening new areas of research. Even with these collaborations, certain things need to change in university administrations as the way they view collaborative research for promotions. Personally, I've never been involved in such collaborations across borders, and the main reason is that I have no way of knowing what my colleagues in other Caribbean territories are working on, nor do I have an avenue of contact for making contact with them. In the same way that academic programs within the region is a viable solution for professional development, so too should collaborations between scientists within the region be encouraged. We have so many commonalities as Caribbean people, and more often than not, the focus of our research is bound to overlap at some level. Finally, yet importantly, the mentorship from fellow women scientists who have already forged a path and fought similar battles cannot be overemphasized. I have benefited from, continue to benefit, and I myself extend such mentorship to individuals within my sphere of influence. So this morning, as we meet to have these conversations on a more formal platform, it gives us the opportunity to plan a way for a plan of action as to how we move forward from here. And I think it's very important to note, even that we meet as a group of women, that it's not about bringing down our boys and men. There must be a way where we can both strive within the sphere of science, both lifting up each other, both getting equal opportunities to succeed. And I would like to think that at the conclusion of this morning's event, we will leave here with ideas on how we can accomplish that as women in science in the Caribbean. Thank you so much for listening.
Very much, and we're going to turn straight over to Prof. Roye.
Thank you very much, Samantha. That was very inspiring. It sounds very similar to my experience, but what I wanted to share this morning are just some risks that I've taken with collaborations, and most have worked out fine. And I would like to share this story about, you're reading scientific papers, you're in Jamaica, and every other paper you take up has a certain scientist's name on it. And this time it was John Stanley from the John Ennis Center in the UK. And I sat at my desk, and I remember I emailed John. I applied for a Commonwealth Fellowship. I've never met him. He doesn't know anything about me. And I emailed him. And I said, I would like to come to your lab to do some work because I'm applying for this Commonwealth Fellowship and I would appreciate a host. And I promise you that this is a true story, and it has happened to me about 3 or 4 times. In 5 minutes, I sit at my computer and he responds and he says, sure, come on up. But I wasn't able to go because it was a 6-month fellowship and the university would not allow me to go on a 6-month fellowship with paid leave. So I had to give that up. But a few years later, one of my PhD students got the Commonwealth Fellowship and went to John Stanley Lab. Okay. A few years later, Professor Helen Jacobs, she is one of our female chemists in Jamaica. And Helen called me and said that there was a student from Campion who had studied at the University of Toronto, and she had finished her PhD, and she's been back in Jamaica, and she was doing a seminar in chemistry. So I went over, and it turned out to be a seminar more in molecular biology than in chemistry. So I invited the young lady to do a seminar in biochemistry, and she did, and it was well accepted. Helen and I hosted her for lunch. And a few months later, she called and she said, Dr. Roye, I have a colleague at the University of Toronto who is doing a proposal for a yeast hybrid system. I had no idea what that was, but he needs a collaborator from a developing country. I'm like, sure, you can give him my name. And so David Macmillan from the University of Toronto contacted me. And I said, okay, what do I need to do? Well, just send your CV. And I did, and I got a grant of 30,000 Canadian dollars just by sending my CV. And I also visited David's lab to learn about yeast-2 hybrid system. And the wonderful thing is that my sister was in Toronto, so I could visit my sister. Okay. And then a few years later, this was in 2013, you read these scientific papers and you try to follow the methodology in the paper and it doesn't really work, and you wonder what it is that you're doing wrong and what's wrong with you. First, your graduate student tries it and it doesn't work, and you say, okay, I'm going to try it because the student must be doing something. And you go in the lab, try it yourself, and it doesn't work. So I contacted John Krause at the International Potato Center. This is the gene bank for potato globally in Lima, Peru. I've never been to South America. And I emailed him and I said, well, I've been trying this technique in your paper, but it's not working for me. So can I come to your lab? That's usually my words. Can I come to your lab and bring my student? And I sat at my computer, and when I saw the response, I couldn't believe it. 5 minutes again, he said, yes, sure, come on down. And my student and I, we went to Lima, Peru. And when we got there, we had scientists from about 20 other South American countries. And John usually hosts a workshop to teach scientists how to analyze the sequence data after they get the data for these viruses, because we're studying viruses. And this was the first time he was hosting a workshop with actually the bench, the experiment part, the laboratory part of the procedure. And he said the reason why he did that was because I asked if I could come to his lab to learn this technique, and he figured maybe if I'm having problems with it, maybe other scientists are having problems with it. And
Yes.
so that was how the workshop happened. And of course, I didn't know anything about this when I was doing it. Now, it might seem simple, but sometimes when I leave Jamaica and I'm going to these places and I'm wondering, oh my gosh, am I going to see my children again? Because I'm going to places, I have no idea who these people are, but I need the help with my research. And I just go and I pray and I go, and I have had maybe 7 or 8 experiences like that where I just email scientists, I ask for their help, and they ask me to come, and I come, and it has been beautiful. And all my career, in fact, in the first 15 years of my marriage, 10 summers, I'm away from Jamaica at some lab doing research. Now, Samantha, I didn't ask my husband or my children if I could go. I tell them, okay, I'm going. You guys want to come? Then that's up to you. And sometimes they travel with me, and sometimes they don't, because if mommy is not happy, then nobody's happy. Even
Exactly.
5 times when I didn't go. One time I was pregnant with my son. The second time I was breastfeeding. When I was pregnant with my second son, I didn't tell my husband until I was at the lab. Nothing he can do about it, and he was going to come up. Anyway, when I got the associate dean job, I thought, okay, maybe I should stay home this summer and learn this job. But that has always been my strategy. When I have a few months in the summer, because I've found with the work that I want to do, it's very challenging in Jamaica, and I've tried it by myself and it doesn't work. So I always go where the experts are, and that's my approach. I ask advice from the experts. So this morning I saw Professor Jackson in the group, and when I became associate dean, one advice I got is that if you're going to email, and Professor Jackson was the head of the graduate school, and one advice I got, send her 10 email with one thing each instead of sending her one email with 10 things each, so she can respond to each of them. And she did every time. Eventually she would say, okay, Marcia, that's very good. You're learning some stuff. So, and then and she was like a mother to me. I felt like if I could do this associate dean job, I felt like she felt like if I could do this associate dean job well, then it would make her job easier. And then the second campus coordinator, who is in charge of the graduate school, treated me the same way, almost like a daughter. You have a question, it's very intimidating when you don't know what to do, but your faculty is depending on you and you have to figure it out. And I would call these ladies and they would explain to me. But I'm telling you that it's very intimidating to admit to yourself that, listen, you have a responsibility and you don't know what to do. And so you have to make yourself vulnerable. But when you do, you will find out that most of the women that you're talking to, they have similar experiences as you. My friend Pamela was saying, boy, Marcia, look like she have it together so well. And I'm saying, Pamela has it together so well. And when I discuss with her, you find out that we have the same problems and the same issues, but we sit in our little bubbles and we pretend like everything is okay and we don't reach out. So that's my advice to women and to scientists. Just reach out to colleagues that you trust, and they will help you. And you will find out that when you try to be really honest with yourself and honest with what's going on and your insecurities, you will find out that there are other colleagues who have similar issues with the same insecurities, and we can support each other. Thank you very much.
Prof. Roye, you have started, both you and Samantha have really kicked this ball off. We're really going well, and I'm seeing lots of comments in the chat, so I can't wait to get to that. But we have a third speaker, so I'm going to go ahead and invite Dr. Gajadhar. Is she still with us?
Okay,
There
my
we are.
apologies. Good morning to all of you. Good morning to all the women, all the mothers, and a few men in the group. I feel it's like a breath of fresh air being in this room. Thank you to UWI for inviting me. And you know, the speakers before me all emphasize that we as women share the same challenges, same issues of trying to balance our careers within the science disciplines and applied science disciplines and families. When I joined the chemistry department in the very early 90s, the three women that were there, and I name, and forgive me if I draw reference to Professor Jackson, at the time it was Dr. Jackson, Dr. Minot, and Dr. Jacobs. These were the women I could have looked to as women. The men were the male lecturers and the male chemists I worked with were very inspirational to me along the academic side. But hearing the stories of Dr. Jackson at the time raising her own and the challenges she had running her organic lab, raising her own family, it somewhat gave me in a subliminal way, the confidence that yes, we can do it. Because one thing I knew for sure was that I needed to find some balance in my personal life, as well as with the lab. At the time, I didn't have children, but it was just as figuring it out, balancing personal with writing. And so the issue of mentors was brought up in the early days. It is so very important. I want to also acknowledge the role that men play in supporting women, because without their support, and we need to acknowledge it, without their support as fathers in the home, without their support as being currently, even today, after almost 30 years, we still have at the governance level, at the top management level, largely predominated by male, without them acknowledging that, yes, we have a valuable contribution to make. I don't think we as women could ever get the chance to step up. And I speak to some of my male mentors. When I first joined the chemistry department, Professor Magnus was the one who pulled me aside to guide me in choosing my subjects. And he convinced me that food chemistry as the applied science would be best fitting if I were to go back home. I always knew I wanted to return to St. Lucia to try to see whatever I could contribute. And that has helped me very well, even in my adult life, professional life, in setting up my own beverage plant. And then working with Professor Kaur, doing my PhD in inorganic physical chemistry, studying those lanthanides, the photophysical decay. Professor Kaur was always one of those who said, think global. Where there's much undone, there's much to be done. And so it was imperative that you collaborate and connect with external scientists. It was through that collaboration, and at the time, I recall Dr. Lancashire just struggled. We were in the early days of UWI, this big computer. Email was a rare thing, but only a few people had access to it. But we had to collaborate with people like Professor Parker, Durham University, other professors. UWI didn't have a crystallography capacity as at the time, and we published papers. So under Professor Kaur, I understood and appreciated the importance of collaboration and networking. That certainly served as a strong pillar for entering my career upon returning to St. Lucia, where I was thrust into senior management, thrust into governance. Thankfully, it was for the national standards body the body that I think epitomizes the bringing together of everything to do with science. And so I had this privilege, but then I knew it was studying chemistry at the University of the West Indies, the way in which my professional life developed. It was, for me, a natural to think anything to do with networking, anything to do with collaboration, that's the only way we're going to lift ourselves up. So one of my first initiatives at the time was to get the island involved in the work of the International Standards Organization, and to collaborate with the more developed standards bureaus like the TTBS and BSG, the National Standards Bureau in Jamaica and Trinidad, because how else would we build ourselves and redevelop? During that period too, I had the opportunity to sit on many boards, and I must tell you, it was a dilemma for me, because in that space at the board level, I found myself not just being sometimes the only woman in many cases, but the only young woman and the only person willing to speak up. And I can tell you, there are a couple of times tears rolled down my eyes in these fora when I had to decide whether or not to remain silent, to walk out, for fear or risk of being too rude among senior men. Speaking up was one of the things that I think that we as women, if it is one thing that we need to arm ourselves with, it's the confidence to speak up in a respectful manner. But the dilemma was also largely due to when it came to managing. Most of my senior managements were women, and I see some of them on the call, people like Betty, and many of the heads of departments are women and doing a fantastic job. But then the people who are making these top decisions needed a bit of understanding of how we involve people, we engage people. And I do think women have the knack for this, whether it is because not all of us may be mothers, but certainly when you have a family raising children, and my colleagues in quality, like Betty always says this, you have a laboratory of right in front of you, because no matter how much process management you know, Six Sigma, no matter how you use through charts and scientific techniques for quality improvements, if you don't understand people and how to network, nothing is going to happen. And it's just been so wonderful working with women who they too have had to balance their families and understanding how to go along this journey. In private sector, I have had some dabbling in private sector before going back into policy development, which all relates to science. But again, I see a lot of small and medium-sized businesses run by women, though women are the ones struggling. But because they have to balance the family, they don't have the time to take part in the networking, the associations, the volunteering, where you can get your voices heard. So we need to give more support, I think, to the backbones of our economy. And I'm saying this in a very personal way because I grew up seeing a woman, my mother, as a backbone of the family, handling the business. She was not a scientist. She was a secretary in administration, but she managed her own businesses and she taught us, and I grew up with a family of only girls. So perhaps we were not nurtured to differentiate roles. It is only when you go out there you realize, but this world isn't designed for us. Our policies, now we speak of flexible work hour policies. In the past, women were embarrassed to sneak out, to leave the office at 4:30 because they have to relieve the helper and take care of the baby, because their boss perhaps would chastise them or not look to them for promotion. Now, it's very comforting to know that we're promoting flexible work hour policies. And then, of course, we see what COVID has done to even facilitate this more. I remember at the time when I was heading the Bureau of Standards and being very much involved in regional networking work with the setting up of COSQ and other regional standards initiatives, there were some colleagues, I interacted with women, and they would tell me then, girl, how do you do this? I'm so glad. And they were much older than me at the time. I was usually the youngest in those days. And a friend of mine from Trinidad says, girl, I'm so happy I had a 9 to 8 to 4 job when I was raising my children, because I could not leave them and travel like you do. And I'm saying this to mean that my family and my kids, I have 3 children, always first in my life. But a very early course I did, and the OECS had put this on for middle managers. The facilitator at the time was out of Trinidad, and she said, we have mainly women in this room, and so let's get something straight. If you can't manage your home, your household, if you cannot put things in place in your household, don't expect to come in the workplace to manage. That really struck a chord for me in my early days at the Bureau of Standards. And so I can tell you that there are few people that along my journey of professional development, I need to speak out for. One of them being my babysitter. I invested in a really good support system. I had my extended family supporting me. My children, I traveled with children breastfeeding as well, pumping, getting, pumping milk, passing through it with customs, and people wondering. And so, but I couldn't do it without them. I couldn't do it without the support of the fathers. And so we are, I would like, that's one thing I'd like all of us to understand and appreciate. We cannot do it alone. And the very fact that we cannot do it alone, it means that these words, networking, collaboration, should be the buzzwords for all of us in all aspects of our lives. I'm very pleased to be part of a movement, for instance, in St. Lucia, that has been launched with the support of the Bureau of Standards, with the initiative of private sector quality professionals. And we've called it the Good Practice Movement. Kudos again to Betty Comby for being insistent on that. Well, in our local sense, we're starting off providing a forum, a network for people to join. And you don't have to be a scientist. You don't have to, and when I say, what is a scientist? We're all scientists. I learned in business and in the management field that there is this barrier we put between the natural sciences and the businesses. It's really imaginary, and it's a structure that was set up within the confines of the limitations of our academic system, but they're all the same. The principles are the same. And so we need to position ourselves where we are more open to others, sharing each other's story. On that note, again, I will end by saying, I do feel indeed privileged speaking in this room of so many women, so many giants in sciences and the applied field. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alison, and thank you all to all the participants. There's so much richness that I actually gleaned from what you all discussed. And I'm going to just share a couple of my quick take-homes and hopefully kick off the question and answer section. From Samantha, what struck me in particular, in addition to the commonality and what you spoke about in my own journey, was the formation of WISE. First thing, I love that acronym. And the first thought in my head was, how can I hope she doesn't have it patented. I wonder if we can do branches. Where can I go? Because I just love the acronym. And of course, speaking about that work-life balance. Prof. Roye, if I heard nothing, I heard you say take risk. And that's going to require some major internalization on my own part in terms of where I fall in the spectrum of a risk taker or risk averse. I'm probably closer to the averse, so I need to work on that. And then, of course, in addition, I was pleased to see that marriage between the science and the applied field and policy, and where we can take our science into a very impactful way into something that an everyday person can understand. And so I really want to thank Alison for that. And she reiterated that need for collaboration, et cetera. So we need to balance work life and family life. We need that strong family support. I heard the importance of mentorship, and both in the chat and in the presentations, we saw a number of female and male stalwarts being mentioned, Prof. Jackson, Prof. Jacobs, Prof. Coward, Dr. Minette Gates, etc. And then this need for taking risk and engaging and putting yourself in a position that you can benefit from some of the rich collaboration globally. So I want to start with my first question, and I'm going to direct this at Prof. Roye, but anyone, of course, is free to answer. And this really is linked to the academic world. So we talk a lot about the ability to travel to other spaces, engage and work in a lab, those type of collaborations. But one of the challenges, the internal struggles that I've always been grappling with is if we constantly leave our spaces to go to another space, which we need to do in order to carry out our research, are we truly building capacity in the region? So I'd love you to address that little dilemma in my head, like how do we build capacity in the region? UWI places structures in our path that allow us to take advantage of some of these, but how about the many students that could benefit if we were able to bring the level of experimentation up in this region? So how do we address that kind of, what in my head first sounds like a contradiction?
So I do go to a lot of labs to gain experience, but then when I get back home to my lab, then I share those experiences and those experimentations that I've learned with my colleagues and with my graduate students. So the training and the technology transfer is there. Sometimes the challenge might be getting funding to get the particular equipment that you need to do the experiment, but there is a lot of technology transfer, and part of the challenge is and I've tried it many times. I've tried to do it by myself, read the papers, and it just doesn't work for me. So I go where the experts are, I get the information, I get the experience, and I take it back to my lab. And I train 3 or 4 people, and so we can transfer the technology like that. And also it gives us opportunity to have collaborative research and grants with our colleagues outside of our country, and that also strengthens us. And you'd be surprised, it doesn't matter where I am. When we share our experiences with scientists in other places, you'll find out that they have the same thing. The PCR doesn't work, the equipment gets broken down. I find that in the first world countries where I've gone to, the only advantage they have over us is that, boy, they can get their chemicals, Jenny. It's like a snap of finger and it takes us a few weeks to do it. But otherwise, all the other challenges are the same. And so I tell myself, okay, things are not so bad in Jamaica. We're doing okay. So that has been my experience. Learn the technology and take it back to your lab and train a few people so it will stay there.
Alison, thank you very much, Prof. Alison, do you want to also weigh in on this? You're not hearing you. You gotta unmute.
I'm forgetting to unmute. Following what Dr. Roye has said, where we all have similar challenges. Machinery will break down. People will fall sick. Things will go wrong. Murphy's Law, we have all of this to fall on. But I do think what in this region, what is not really given enough attention to is the resources for to assign adequate resources for effective management. A lot of the times, the issues it takes a longer time, perhaps because our management systems are not attuned with the reality of the problems we face. So for instance, if it takes 4 weeks to get a reagent, then we should be having a procurement management system backed by adequate finance and proper supervision to mark at which level that we reorder to leave allowances, or we have to allocate more financial resources to build in redundancies in the system. So when a piece of machinery goes down, it's not an excuse to the recipient of that service, whether it is the students or the person you're selling the service to otherwise, that, oh, my machine is down and so we have to wait. It's a lot to do with, there's something we use, it's called the Demon cycle, the philosophy, plan, do, check, act. In your planning phase, you need to take into consideration that yes, we are developing countries, we're islands, things get to us by this, what could go wrong? You apply your risk management principles. Now, in the bigger countries, people are they're adequately resourced to manage these systems. But here I find in the region, we have our same experts who could be given off their time and their brains to much more other areas where they're gifted to, having to struggle with management issues, with admin issues, the same people doing everything. So even our structures within the organization where promotions are only granted based on you have to move out of your technical field into administration. We're losing brains here too. But I do find in the bigger countries, and this is why unemployment is probably lower, because they recognize the roles of every individual and they allocate proper resources to management. That's an area I'm passionate about, because in managing science and scientific outputs, we crumble, and I'm seeing it, having been involved in management, that the weakness is from the management discipline and the resources that our politicians, our decision makers put towards that. My little.
Thank you very much, Alison and Prof. Roye. I think we have a couple of hands up. So I'm going to invite Khalil Holder first, if they want to ask a question. And if you can turn on your camera, if at all possible, when asking the question. I think we have Khalil reconnecting. Khalil, can you hear us? All right.
Right. While she connects, do we want to take another quick question?
Sure. So any questions from anyone else in the chat? Anka, did you see anyone else? I do want to say—
Well, the comments have been mostly agreeing with our speakers, you know, lots of insightful comments, not seeing any direct questions at this point. I would like to pose a quick question while we wait for Khalila. Everyone has spoken about the role of visibility in terms of a female professional that they saw that allowed them to feel that this was possible. Speaking about mentorship, are there any additional tools that you think, if you're in a small space that you do not have that female representation, how do you go about getting the necessary mentorship? I'm opening it to any of the panelists. Roye, you don't want to jump in?
I just sighed. I'm thinking about that. And mentorship comes in many ways. Sometimes you don't expect them. And what we don't think about sometimes is an advocate, somebody who who knows your skill, knows your resourcefulness, and will advocate on your behalf. It's not just what's on your CV or the challenges that you might have. So I have learned about the importance of somebody advocating on my behalf. The people who sit at the table, sometimes you're not there, but they know you, they know of your work, and they can advocate on your behalf. In terms of mentorship, you know, I had a year, I was the Associate Dean for Graduate Studies and Research in Faculty of Science and Technology, and I had a year when I didn't have any publication, and I'm saying to myself, Marcia, this is foolishness. How can you be the Associate Dean for Research and you have no publications? And I reached out to a colleague, and she said, boy, you need to stop doing this thing alone. You need support. So we actually put together a group of scientists, 6 people, eventually 3 of us worked together to help each other to get the publications out. But I remember when I was doing it, I felt so vulnerable just to reach out to somebody and tell them, listen, I'm struggling with this thing and I need some help. So that's what we need to do. Sometimes my story has been to reach out and ask for help, and you would be surprised. I don't think I have ever asked for help on this campus from anyone, and they haven't reached out and helped me. But I'm telling you, it's very intimidating. You think about it long and hard before you do. If you're in a small space where the mentorship is not there, then find somebody who is at the place where you want to be and ask them how they got there, because they're very important and simple steps that you need to take, but sometimes you don't believe it. I invited Yvette Jackson one time to our graduate orientation, and she shared a story that I will never forget. That one time she actually decided that she was going to quit grad school. This is the great professor that we all look up to, and she was at a point one time when she was going to quit. So, you know, reach out. That's what you need to do. We have so many wonderful women here. We have similar experiences. Reach out when you need help, and you'd be surprised. It makes you vulnerable, but you might learn so much and gain so much just by reaching out and admitting to yourself that you need help. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you very much for those very, very useful words. I have one question in the chat, and Dr. Brown, can I keep going? We are over time, so I'm just checking in.
Yeah, we could just touch on that one question and then we'll wrap up, because I know everyone is pressed for time.
Fantastic, thank you. So the question is, any suggestion on how the burden of management and administration in a sluggish system can be removed from the talented scientists in an institution that is poorly funded? And I want to bring in Samantha on this in particular. If she can still hear me, I would love her to take a first stab at that. So the burden of management and administration, talented scientists in an institution that is poorly funded.
Honestly, this question somebody probably read my mind, and this came from my heart. I don't know that I have all the answers, but I'd like to piggyback on what Professor Roye said earlier. You have to reach out. You have to reach out, because sometimes this burden can get so heavy, because in addition to the management and administrative responsibilities that you have, you're still expected to perform at the highest level academically in terms of getting research done and being promoted and move from one level to the other. And all the times you don't necessarily have the resources available to do that. But I think this will bring us back to collaboration, because where you have shared resources and persons with the same needs, a group of persons can probably be formed aimed at the assistance of persons, because From my personal experience, even though I'm the head department, I'll be first to admit, and the others in the department know, I have no shame whatever in reaching out and asking for help. Asking, how can this be done? Is there somebody that you can put me on that knows to do this a better way? How can we get things started? Who persons that you think I can call on to join this team for us to get this task completed? Involve as many people as you can, ask as many people as you can. There is nothing wrong with asking. It's either yes or no. But you just have to keep pushing. Basically, that's it. We just keep pushing every day. A new challenge, a new thing. But over time, you learn from mistakes made. You learn from looking at other people who might have done it better. And you just keep going forward, shoulders to the wheel, and just keep pushing every single day, never giving up. So I don't know that it can be removed. I just know that you can develop ways of dealing with it better. You can develop ways of dealing with it. I don't think it can be totally removed. They're just coping mechanisms that you put in place.
Thank you very much, Samantha. I just heard many hands make light work.
Oh,
That's
yes.
exactly what I just heard.
Oh, yes.
So, friends, colleagues, I just want to say that I wish that we could go on for many more minutes, but our time is limited, and wow, what a conversation we have started. Dr. Brown has placed in the chat for all to see that there is a move afoot to develop some type of a repository that will bring together these Caribbean women, and that is so badly needed. And we're hoping that once it is completed and placed on the website, we can replicate it on our own institutions' websites as well, at least the links to that. I want you all to join me in thanking our three panelists for sharing their experiences, giving us some wise counsel, giving us some food for thought. So we did have Mrs. Samantha Joseph, we had Prof. Marcia Roye, and last but definitely not least, we had Dr. Alison Gajadhar. So thank you very much all, and thank you for listening, and I'm going to turn back over the session to Dr. Brown.
All right, thank you so much, Janice. All right, it is 8:05, we're over time. We want to say a tremendous thank you to everyone for joining in. This has been an important conversation, which I'm sure we need to continue. Please encourage your colleagues to, we will send a link where more persons can sign up for the Caribbean Director of Women in Science. We need to connect. We need to collaborate, and I think this is a start of many great things to come. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.